Yeah, my name's Mike Lee. I'm based out of Detroit, Michigan. I have a consultancy called The Future Market that helps big food brands think about the future more strategically. And I'm the author of a book called Mise on the Future of Food. The book is 4 scenarios about the future of food that takes a lot of topics that are relevant to people today in food. So things like the rise of regenerative agriculture, things like the rise of AI finding its way into food, things like automation, robotics in food, personalized nutrition. These are all kind of like bleeding edge topics people are talking about now, but some of those things are really just nascent, right? And so what the book does is takes a lot of those nascent trends and kind of jumps forward and imagines, what if these things became mainstream? What if they took over the world? What would happen? Good, bad, and ugly, right? And so that's what the book really paints, is 4 different scenarios, from a high level overview of the industry, but also like from a very personal, intimate level. I think food is interesting because it's a huge system, but we eat very personally and intimately. So that contrast between big and small is really important. And that's what the book is about. So it's set up like a magazine. I love magazines as a format because they can kind of take you to a different time and place. If you go to a thrift store and you pick up an old magazine from the 60s, it's a magazine from the 60s. And so I kind of took the opposite approach with this, where I wanted to give the vibe that you went into a time machine 20 years forward, picked up a magazine off the newsstand and brought it back. So all the images are AI generated to support the story, but there's also a whole host of nearly 24 speculative ads for products that might exist in the future. And so it's all like in service of like world building. Yeah. And kind of giving you the vibe of like I'm somewhere else for the time that I'm reading this book. That's really why it was important that each of the 4 scenarios has like a general component, as if it was like a journalist like doing an overview of like the State of the Union kind of thing, like a big general thing. But then it always has fictitious characters, but characters, like personal characters, like personalized nutrition. Like I talked about that here at SKS. Like a lot of people have talked about that in broad strokes, right? It'll do this, it'll do that. I wanted to pair that with like, okay, what does this actually look like when a family sits down on Thanksgiving and they're all using this technology? And really it's all in service of like helping the people developing those things today, like just be smarter about how you develop them. I mean, this idea, I feel like marketers, especially in food, have always been trying to make smaller and smaller segments to kind of put people into different buckets, right? And the best you can kind of do today is like a generalized bucket, like, okay, here's a whole pile of people that are gluten-free, right? Great. But like within that, there's a lot of difference in people, how people think, right? And so I think one of the interesting things you're starting to see with LLMs is the ability to kind of write ads on the fly based off of the individual and do that in kind of an automated, scalable way. It's a little scary when you think about how an ad will talk to you differently than it is now, but I think that's a thing that is coming and is already started to begin to use. On the flip side, on like the supply side, like AI and machine learning, I think has been being used, but is used even more like on farms to do precision agriculture and things like that, right? So maybe we don't need to blast the entire field with, pesticide. We can just surgically do it here, here, and here, right? And just pick out things like that. So I think like there's also a lot of use cases where machine learning can be used to make agriculture more efficient, make the same amount of food with less resources, which is something that is clearly super important for the future. I mean, I think like some of the more profound uses of machine learning and AI in the future in food might be invisible to the eater. Maybe that's a good thing, right? Because no matter how digital the system that produced it is, food is going to always be analog, right? And so maybe that's like one solution in a world where all the AI is happening in the kitchen, behind the scenes, on the farm, but you're still eating food on a plate. And maybe that's the right balance on it until somebody thinks of something that improves upon that experience, yeah. Which I'm sure someone's working on.
I just thought of Back to the Future, and they have, gone to the future and got some of the magazines and things, almanacs.
That was a big influence, yeah.
Was it?
That idea of like Biff going into the future,
Yeah.
get a sports almanac, and coming back, and
That's funny. I just thought that when I.
yep, yeah, you got it.